So no pressure, Andy, at all. Speaking on behalf of the whole industry. A little bit about myself. I've been with BP for 37 years now. I was going to say all my working life. It probably feels like all my life, actually, the whole life, but a long time. Currently support everything digital for our oil and gas, so everything from exploration through projects, drilling, subsurface, production, then decommissioning, then into our refineries as well, so I support our refineries globally. And then also our low carbon energy businesses, so hydrogen, onshore wind, offshore wind, and biofuels. So worked a long time in the industry, and I love what Nico was talking about. It is all about mindset. You were basically talking about the mindset, and that's the big challenge, certainly, that we see within the oil and gas industry. So many of you will know who IOGP are, but several might not. So it's the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, been around 50 years. It was formed in response to the OPEC crisis in 1974. Currently got 92 members. You can see the logos there. And it's oil and gas companies, sort of owner-operators on the left-hand side as you're looking. And then we've got some associations, and then we've also got some of the associate members, so the supply chain in terms of oil field services and some of the EPC contractors as well. What basically we created 2 years ago, January 2023, we created a digital transformation committee, with the intent of that was to actually deliver value across the industry by trying to create an open, interoperable ecosystem all the way from the beginning through to the end. And that was the challenge we set ourselves. We've actually got 27 of those 92 members. There's actually 27 that are active in this digital transformation committee. It's interesting, they talk a lot in IOGP about sweat equity, and I hadn't worked in any of these things before when I started 2 years ago. Joined it and they asked me to chair it. And I wondered, well, what is the sweat equity? Well, it basically means you're doing a whole second job without getting paid for it. That's what the sweat equity is. And I can see there's a few people laughing. You've obviously worked with the IGP before, but it's not quite charity work, but it is something we're doing on behalf of the industry and giving our time. So I've got two colleagues who are the vice chairs, so Keith Johnson from Chevron and Milena Helgeson, who's from Equinor. And we're basically trying to see what we can do to drive standardization across our whole oil and gas industry. I'll just say that again. We're trying to drive standardization through digital technology across the whole of our industry. It's very difficult. And Nico, I can understand why it's taken a decade or even 20 years, I think you said right at the beginning, for what you're trying to do. This is really difficult to do. But we need to deliver it. And so we've set up various groups. You'll see there's various expert groups, so change management. There's one on digital platforms, one on digital skills, and one on opportunity screening, and I'll come back to those in a moment. And then there's another one that we've finished actually, JAS 01, which is on material digital passport. And we're just kicking off some new ones as well I'll talk about on the next slide. So this is the overall strategy, the focus, and then the actual delivery mechanisms, how we try and work together. You'll see on the left the strategy elements, and I hadn't checked my slides with Nico's before we started, but I fully agree with you. It's that data centricity, that reference data foundation, that is the core to all of this, and hopefully nobody will be surprised at that. I've been supporting our digital organization within BP for the last 6 years. I came from the projects organization, so I actually was a project director on a gas to liquids project for BP, gosh, 20 years ago now, that didn't go forward. But I've been learning about this digital world and the IT world for the last 6 years, and the core is absolutely that data foundation. So there's a lot in there around sort of foundational information standards and also the domain standards. On top of that is how do you actually exchange that information? So what is that platform, whatever you want to call it, digital product, digital platform, data platform? We've got all sorts of different words to describe it. How do we actually make that data exchange happen and it's seamless and interoperable? And on top of it, we're talking about what are the use cases? So that third bucket from the bottom, that digital capabilities are really the use cases for the oil and gas industry that we've brainstormed as those 27 companies. And then right on top is what will our workforce need in terms of digital skills and knowledge. And again, Nico, very similar to what you were talking about for Cherilon as well. So those are the sort of the strategy of what we're looking for. In terms of the focus, we're trying to focus on the next 3 years. So we've agreed what are those key focus areas, and I'll show you those on the next slide. We actually have an opportunities backlog as a group of 27 companies. So we are constantly grooming that and then prioritizing and saying which of the things we'll work on first. So again, I can talk to you about that in a couple of slides. And then there's some real focus on what are some of those foundational or enabling standards and the platforms that we actually need. And then the way we deliver, we have expert groups, I mentioned those, so that's, again, much more sweat equity. So those are the experts within our companies that give their time, probably, they say 10%, it's probably more like 20% of time that people are giving there to actually focus on some of these areas that we want to deliver. We have things called joint industry sprints, joint industry projects. The joint industry project is sort of typically what IOGP has done. There's been some conversations yesterday. I was in the digital twin working group and we were talking about JIP 33 and JIP 36. So those are ones to do with equipment procurement standards, JIP 33, and then CFOS, the Capital Facilities Information Handover Specification, is JIP 36. JIS, Joint Industry Sprint, we've tried to make IOGP more agile. And those of you who've worked with IOGP, you're probably laughing at the moment, so please, we are trying to become, so we're calling them sprints. We've kicked that off. We've completed one, which is JIS 01, and we're just about to open up a second one, which is JIS 03, I'll talk about on the next slide. So there are sort of 3 key documents that we created in the first year, basically, first 10 months. So one was the 5-year strategy from 2023 out to 2027. The second one was one on digital capabilities. So those are the use cases, as I said, for the industry. And then the final one is around digital skills and knowledge. And you can see on the slide, what are the things we are focused on. And we said we'd focus on the sort of medium term, 3 years, so 2023 to 2025. So these are the things, and we're trying to make sure that we screen and what we work on, which I'll talk about in the next slide, are aligned with sort of safe sites, so anything to do with safety. Looking at digital twins, of course. There's additive manufacturing, and there's actually been a separate JAS that's been set up within another part of IGP to focus on that. Greenhouse gas data and standards, and then finally the interoperable engineering data. And then below that, sort of linking into those, the skills you would expect. So artificial intelligence. So again, we created this, I think it was October 2023, so before the Gen AI and everything else came out. So I would say we're maybe a bit prescient, but we said that that's something that as an industry we need to be focusing on. Digital twinning itself, automation, data science, and then all the data management. And then the competencies on the bottom are more sort of business and technical competencies, not necessarily to do with digital, but if you're going to be able to enable those skills across the top, you actually need these basic competencies in the oil and gas business. Yeah, perfect. And then this is the final slide. So this is what are we working on in 2025. So on the left, you can see the digital capability, so the use cases that we're looking at. And on the right, you can see the digital competencies that were on the previous slide. And then at the bottom, it's just what are the various things that we're looking at. Color coding, what's in orange has been delivered. The sort of, I would call it red, it's probably purple, isn't it, in that sense. So that's things that are actually opened in 2024. And then the blue are things that we're planning to open and actually work on in 2025. And there's a few there, the greys are the ones that are proposed, but they're being queued up into what we can do. The issue with this area is just capacity of how much to do. I talked about sweat equity, so this is really how much of this can we actually do all at the same time. So it's around prioritization. The one that we have completed, I talked about Material Digital Passport, MDP, JIS 01, so that was complete at the beginning of last year, so that's there. That's really sort of a blockchain specification for immutable traceability of equipments, which is something, it's a foundational standard that we need. The key one that's opening up, so you can see it, the second one down there, under sort of digital twin and interoperable engineering data, is HYPE, JS03. So HYPE stands for the Hub for IGP Parts and Equipment. I mentioned that IGP has spent a lot of effort trying to standardize equipment procurement specifications, this JRP 33. They created these, I think it's 54 standards now that they've created over 10 years. And the idea was to try and get the industry all to procure the same type of equipment, whether it's pump, LV motors, rotating equipment, whatever it is. We're trying to see if we can standardize, get all of the companies to agree, and then buy the same. So each vendor doesn't have to say, well, which pump am I supplying today? Is it the BP pump or the Shell pump or the Exxon or the Chevron pump? Try and say it's an industry standard pump. I think the downside was what we created was PDFs. Remember, this started in 2015, so created PDFs, and of course, there's no way of electronically exchanging data information. And that's been a barrier to adoption across the industry. So one of the most exciting things we're trying to do is actually build this. It's a data product, basically, is what it is, but a way of exchanging data. We're just going to do it on one of those 54 specifications to start with. LV motors, we're going to start with that. Something that there is good alignment across the SMEs in the oil and gas companies, and look and see how we can actually build a product that actually allows the exchange of information all the way from the vendors through the EPC contractors and then into the owner-operators as well, and move both ways. So we kicked that JS off in early November. We're reviewing, we've gone out with RFPs out to some of our usual system integrators across the companies. We're going to award the first contract this Friday, so we've got a steer code to review that and make the decision with a view to kicking off in early March. So we will actually be starting to code, not we, certainly not me. There will be proper people, proper blockchain developers and software engineers and data engineers will be doing some coding to actually build that and then build this for the industry. And again, we won't be selling it. It is the industry's IP, and it's something that we'll be providing out there to try and enable and encourage that exchange of standard data all the way through from vendors. We'll start simple. Let's do an MVP. Let's see if we can do it for LV motors. If that's successful, then we can build more and more and more once we've got the reference framework that's set up there. And a number of others that will follow through, but that's the really core one. That's the first time we will see as an industry, can we actually create this? And sort of the ARC group have been supporting us in that in terms of what is that reference data architecture framework that we're looking at and seeing what other industries are doing, and that's very much the input that we're getting from Andy and Mark and the team. Various other things we're looking at, obviously digital twins is one, which is why I was in the digital twin working group yesterday, because what we also don't want to do is duplicate what's happening elsewhere. So we're trying to be very aware of what's happening in other groups, and where we don't need to do something again, let's just come together and we set up an MOUs between IOGP and whatever that other group is to make sure that we're working together and we can bring everything together that works across the whole industry. And then the other one I would call out is the responsible use of AI. So of course AI, as Nico was talking about, there's a lot going on. I must admit, I've been amazed in the last 12 months how much progress has been made in our company. And I've sort of never thought we would see this speed of change with the Gen AI, and it's happening. But you need the guardrails to go with that. So it's not just boom, let it go. It's actually writing those guardrails. So we've got guardrails within BP that we use for this. And what we're trying to do is we view AI and responsible use of AI, it's very much like safety. So as IOGP, one of the first things IOGP did when it came together 50 years ago was come up with safety. And one of the things they talk about is the life-saving rules that we all now implement across those companies. We certainly see the responsible use of AI is in that space. So again, we're sharing, there's, obviously the algorithms that we use, that is IP, but actually the framework we use and how we use it and how our engineers use it to make choices and decisions. That is something, and again, they're kicking that off today. Actually, as we speak, that's being kicked off today, that expert group, to try and come up with what are those, I don't know what you'd call it, golden rules of cyber safety to help keep everybody working in the same direction. So that was it. I was going to stop there, and obviously we've got a panel session later. Happy to take any questions there, but there's a lot going on, and I mean, we've not been talking about this. This is probably only the second time I've spoken about what we're doing here. But thank you, Andy, for giving me the opportunity to come and talk, and happy to answer any questions during the panel.